I'd like to call to order the Planning and Zoning regular meeting for Thursday, April 1st. If everybody would please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. And Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Peters,
Here.
Member Benedict,
Here.
Member Estrada,
Here.
Member Dugan,
Here.
Vice Chairman McBride,
Here.
Chairman Miller.
Here. Thank you. Director, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay. And did everybody get a chance to review the minutes from last meeting?
Yes. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right, next order of business, new business as we jump into it. Just in case we have anybody new joining us or watching us on TV. The way this will go is the staff will present the agenda item. The commission will get the opportunity to ask questions or get any clarification from staff. After that, we will ask the applicant to come forward. At that time, the applicant can add any additional information, take on questions from the commission, and make any clarifications, and then we will open it up to the public. Once the public's done, then we will bring it back to the commission for a vote. So with that, we'll start off with the first agenda item. Public hearing and consideration of request by Mike Keck for zone change DSA 21-00008.
Zone change from single-family residential, R1, to multifamily residential, R3, for approximately 2.5 acres, generally located east of Schultz Street and north of McMurray. You can see the location highlighted in yellow on your screen. And so it's going from R1, it will go to R3, which is multifamily. So the site is requested to be rezoned to create a multifamily apartment complex. The project aims to address the growing and unmet need for multifamily residences within the city. From planning's perspective, this presents a good opportunity to provide workforce housing in an infill site with proximity to the downtown and the industrial corridor of the city. When looking at the review criteria for a zone change, we looked at the proposed use shall be in conformance with the general plan. Number one on that is that the action is consistent with the city's general plan, including the goals, policies, and applicable elements. The site lies within the Phase 1 or the primary growth area of the General Plan 2020. R3 is an appropriate zoning in the community center land use category. Policy C4.7.1 states to encourage a variety in neighborhood design and development patterns. This is in an area that is near a manufactured home park as well as single-family residence, so it will add to that variety. And then policy C4.1.4 states to support infill development in areas where infrastructure capacity and services are already in place and viable. Number two on that criteria is a rezoning conforms to the general plan if it proposes land uses, densities, or intensities within the range of identified uses of the general plan. Again, the request for a zone change to R3 is an allowable and appropriate land use within the community center category. The community center category allows for a density between 4 and 20 units per acre. At 2.5 acres, the site could accommodate between 10 and 50 dwelling units. Another note, if the zone change is denied, development of the site would be very limited due to Arizona Department of Water Resources restrictions regarding the granting of CAWS, or the Certificate of Assured Water Supply. And the third one is that the proposed zone change is necessary and proper at this time to meet the land use needs of the residents of the city. So this zone change will allow the current owner to develop and utilize the property for a new multifamily apartment complex, a product type that the city has determined to need additional inventory to meet demand. In regards to notification, we met or exceeded all requirements, and we did not receive any comments in this particular case. So in conclusion, staff recommends the commission forward a recommendation of approval of the zone change request, DSA 21-00008, from single-family residential to multifamily residential with the following condition. We did amend the condition. I provided a copy of that amended condition in front of you, and I'll go ahead and go through it real quick. In accordance with the Casa Grande Municipal Code Section 17.68.550, the property owner shall dedicate the necessary right-of-way in accordance with the classification of roadways as set forth in the city's general plan 2020, as amended and in effect as of the adoption date of this ordinance. Such dedication shall occur no later than the time of plating or site plan approval, or as otherwise provided by the Casa Grande Municipal Code, but shall also be required earlier if requested by the city as part of an existing or proposed public works project. Nothing in this condition alleviates the property owner from compliance with any other dedication requirements set forth in the Casa Grande Municipal Code as amended from time to time. And that concludes any questions.
Member Dugan.
This is be forwarded to the city council for a zone change, correct?
Commissioner Dugan, that is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Other questions? No, we're good. No? All right. Thank you. At this time then, would the applicant and/or their representative, Mike, you'd like to come forward?
Good evening, my name is Mike Keck. My address is 442 West Cortson Road, Suite 101. Wanted to just thank the members of city staff and the planning office for their time and assistance. This is my first time through the process. I found them very helpful, and they were more than willing to take a call or email to help me get through this. Rather than regurgitate what Joe said, I'd be willing to take any questions. I'm sure you have a busy night tonight, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Member McBride?
Mr. Keck, what type of buildings are you planning, or is there a plan as of this point?
We sketched out a couple different variations, didn't want to submit anything firm because we weren't really sure, and we hadn't had the parcel engineered yet as far as the retention areas and whatnot. We're not sure how much we could get. It might need some second story, but if the city was opposed to that, we would do whatever the city felt was in the best interest of the community around the parcel. Probably duplexes, fourplexes, something along that line.
Thank you, good luck.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you
And,
for your time. Have a
yeah.
good evening.
Excited to see more empty lots filled in with things. All right. At this time, I will open it up to the public. Anybody from the public like to come speak to this agenda item? And I guess I didn't ask, are we on Zoom as well? Again, I think, yeah. Do we have any Zoom attendees? Okay, perfect. Then I will close the public portion now. Bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion, please.
By all means.
I would like to make a motion to forward a favorable recommendation of approval of the zone change request, DSA 21-00008, single-family residential R1 to multifamily residential R3 with the following listed condition.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Peters,
Aye.
Member Benedict,
Aye.
Member Estrada,
Yes.
Member Dugan,
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride,
Yes.
Chairman Miller.
Yes. Motion approved. Congratulations. Good luck. Next up, public hearing and consideration of request by Earl and Curley for Lennar, Arizona LLC for major amendment to the McCartney Ranch Planned Area Development, PAD, Zone DSA 21-0045.
Good evening. So as you introduce this item, this is a request by Lennar. A little bit of background and why this item is in front of you this evening is back in February, Planning Commission approved housing product for Lennar. The housing product approval was for McCartney Ranch parcels 3 and 4 and the 115 vacant lots within that area. The approval allowed for 6 single-story home plans ranging from 1,400 square feet to just over 2,500 square feet with 3 exterior styles per plan. One of the 6 floor plans included a multi-generational suite. And what that was is a 751 square foot area within the home designed either for parents or adult children to have their own separate enclave within the home. It includes a large bedroom, a walk-in closet, a living area, and kitchen. Because there were concerns that this multi-generational suite could end up being used as a separate dwelling unit, and the zoning of the area only allows single-family dwellings, there were some conditions of approval associated with that housing product back in February. One of them was to modify this home plan to remove the kitchen elements out of the next-gen suite. And then also one of the conditions was that interior access into the home between the suite and the house should always be maintained. Currently, there are 3 access points into the suite area. There is interior access into the rest of the house identified by the red circle. It gives access to the same area of the home as the other people within the dwelling to access on into the primary kitchen or the bedroom areas, etc. The green circle indicates access into the attached garage, and then the black circle did provide an exterior access into that area. But for all intents and purposes, it functions as a single-family home. As you can see from one of the elevation renderings, it has the appearance of an ordinary dwelling. The reason for the condition to modify the plan to remove the kitchen element is because in the zoning for the McCartney Ranch planned area development, the allowed use is single-family residential. And though that's the intent for the homes with a next-gen suite, the McCartney Ranch PAD guide defaults to the city code for the definition of single-family. And when you turn to the city code for that, it basically says buildings used for residential occupancy by one family. And then when you look at the definition of family, it says any number of individuals customarily living together as a single housekeeping unit and using common cooking facilities. So the concern was over the presence of that second kitchen. What Lennar Homes is requesting in this evening's presentation is to amend the PAD to allow the multi-generational next-gen suite model to include a kitchen on any of the 115 vacant lots owned by Lennar. The next-gen suite cannot be rented as a separate space, and it's not going to be considered a duplex or a two-family dwelling because the programmed model that has been in place in other Lennar neighborhoods is this really is to provide for an enclave for either adult children or for the family's parents that are also sharing the home. One of the conditions that staff is recommending is that the living space will have to maintain unrestricted interconnectivity inside the home. And if this gets approved, this would allow the floor plan considered by Planning Commission to be used as originally intended, with a next-gen suite having its own kitchen. However, any new floor plans that Lennar would be presenting in the future that would also include a next-gen suite would be subject to further Planning Commission housing product approval. With regard to PAD amendments, this is the type of amendment that does require council consideration as well. Typically, council consideration is normally required when there's an increase in density or if a new land use is proposed. In this situation, actually, neither is occurring. The density still remains as it is, because it's still to be regarded as a single-family dwelling. They're not creating a duplex or an additional dwellings than what's already been approved. But since the single-family dwelling definition is fundamentally changing, we determined that council consideration would be appropriate. There are a set of criteria that must be met in order to consider a PAD amendment, and the staff report goes into it in more detail, but I'm going to just focus on the highlighted items for tonight's presentation. The first is regarding conformance to the city's general plan. McCartney Ranch sits within the neighborhood's land use designation, and it allows densities up to 4 dwelling units per acre. The density of McCartney Ranch is actually at 2.92, well under the target. And this isn't changing with this request because, as I mentioned, the intention is for these homes to continue to be used as single family. Goal C-12 1.1 of the general plan states that there's a goal to provide a variety of housing choices for all income levels, generations, and household demographics. The inclusion of this next-gen suite provides dynamic options for young families or retirees alike by being able to live in a home that has this enclave. And it's an amenity that is a popular selling point by Lennar and other communities. Additionally, this helps address the affordable housing issue. The next criteria that I want to talk about is the adequacy of the plan with respect to land use. Lennar did provide examples of other communities, such as this neighborhood in Chandler, that also offers homes with a next-gen suite. From both an aerial view and from a street view, the home blends in as all the other single-family homes do in the neighborhood. In this particular example within McCartney Ranch, they're providing 3 different exterior elevations, whether it be Spanish, Ranch Hacienda, or Craftsman, but it takes on the appearance of a traditional single-family home. Another criteria I want to talk about is the impact of the plan on the existing and anticipated traffic and parking conditions. So in the city code, 2 off-street parking spaces are required per dwelling. This amendment will not alter that. There will still be the requirement for a minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces. Since this is still regarded as a single-family dwelling, it's not to be treated differently. And the applicant had made a point that our code doesn't state that a 9-bedroom home is required more parking versus a 2-bedroom home. So therefore, just the fact that this house happens to have a next-gen suite should be beholden to the same city code requirements. The last criteria I want to talk about is the building location, height, and building elevations. So as you approved already with the housing product, all of the homes proposed will have to meet particular development standards that are already in place for the McCartney Ranch planned area development, and that's not changing. There's particular setbacks and maximum heights that will be met and continue to be provided with this amendment. Regarding the notification process and public comment, we did send notification to owners of property within 300 feet of the subject lots, as well as to the HOA. There was a sign posted by the applicant, and there was notification in the Casa Grande Dispatch. I only had received one comment, which was by telephone, from a homeowner in McCartney Ranch who owns several investment properties. They indicated that they were familiar with Lennar's multi-generational product because he happens to own investment properties in the Chandler area. And he also did not have specific concerns, except he raised a good question, which was, how can the city ensure that the suite is not to ever be rented separately? And it is a good question because the definition of single family is very broad, and it is very encompassing. But really the way to respond to it is this way. The private CC&Rs that are in place for McCartney Ranch do not allow that space to be rented separately, and they're not intending to amend those private CC&Rs. We're recommending a zoning condition for the same. There is also a condition being recommended that the interconnectivity between the suite and the home must remain unrestricted. And also, based on Lennar's narrative that they provided, this is a very popular home type in many traditional single-family neighborhoods in the valley. It provides an additional option for families to provide accommodations for different generations of the family. So staff does recommend that Planning Commission forward to City Council a recommendation to approve the PAD amendment, which would also approve Plan number 483 as originally intended, so it could have a second kitchen, subject to the conditions that I've discussed in the presentation and within the staff report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff?
Go ahead, Mike.
Member McBride?
James, the one question I had is the external door. Is there going to be sidewalks up to the door? Is that going to be into the backyard, or how? Because I was going to say it'd be easier if there's no sidewalks going to it, to say this is what it's planned to be, because I'm very in favor of this plan.
Sure.
I just don't want it to have an easy access right up to the door so they can do something that's not intended to be done.
I'll have the applicant address that because I have not yet seen plot plans for this home style. I guess the way that I would answer that is off of a lot of master bedrooms, there tends to be exterior access, such as like with French doors, etc. So the fact that they were presenting or proposing exterior access didn't raise a concern to me. But how they plan to further embellish that, whether with a sidewalk, etc., I'm not certain.
Okay, thank you.
Member Dugan?
So that means that you're going to approve ovens and stoves in the kitchen area?
If this were to get approved, Commissioner Dugan, they would be able to develop the suite with a full kitchen.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Hang on,
If I could just.
we'll bring you up, yeah.
Could I clarify for just 1 second on Commissioner Dugan's inquiry? Did you mean was staff going to approve homes with 2 kitchens in different areas of the city or just in Lennar McCartney Ranch?
Just that there'll be a
This
regular
one.
kitchen for the family living in and the living quarters for the parents, let's say. There'll be another stove and another full kitchen there.
Yes, in the Lennar model in McCartney Ranch, that's true.
Got it. So because it doesn't make much difference if you didn't, their microwaves are now used as cooking ovens. They got a two choice too, so it doesn't really mean anything. Okay, I'm just curious.
Pretty soon our cell phone's gonna be able to cook us dinner, right?
You're meaning they're not changing the rule for everyone, just for this one plot?
At this time, that is true.
Yes.
Yes.
The only question that I have for staff and as we were considering this and trying to mull it through is the CC&R say that it can't be done. Ultimately, in reality, the city, until neighbors start turning each other in, aren't going to be able to potentially stop it. The door that enters the other home, that is an easily removed item. I mean, it doesn't take much to do that. So I guess my only thought or concern was, do we not design this for the ability and the building codes that would appreciate the appropriate firewalls in between and everything else? If the CCNRs don't allow it, that's fine, but in future developments or future neighborhoods, PADs that maybe did allow some sort of duplex, it would be a very good-looking duplex that it could very well be rented. We're not gonna be able to stop that, right? I mean, honestly, a weekend, you could have that door that connects the two removed, and the city would never, ever know. And so instead of trying to push this through pretending like it's not going to happen, why don't we just push it through appropriately like it potentially could and do the right codes with it, right, that run along with it?
So the definition of a duplex is two single-family dwelling units that are separated by basically an impermeable wall. So if that were to be the request, they would actually have to redesign this home in a number of ways by providing a firewall to completely separate the house. I don't know if they would welcome access into the shared garage space. And then also the attic access into the home is through this suite. So that would probably have to be modified as well. It would ultimately have to be changed to a different product because the intent is for this to be a single family home, but with added amenities, such as that second kitchen.
In addition to those modifications that James mentioned, you would also have to have separate mechanical systems, right? Like separate meters for electric and water and wastewater, and this one is going to just work off like one mechanical system. You'd have to design it to be two separate systems, as most duplexes are.
Understanding the concept of now taking it to the nth degree the other way, but if I own one of these homes and I seal up that door and rent that space out and say, don't worry, your utilities is covered under your rent. You know what I mean? And so we start to create a situation. I'm just trying to figure out, what I don't like is we put in place things that we can't enforce or things that then become out of our control. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around, the CCNRs aren't gonna allow it, the house plan doesn't allow it, everything's good, but it's gonna happen. And so then we're gonna have a neighbor calling, complaining about something, and yet I don't know, it just seems odd. Sometimes we battle ourselves in ways that I think aren't necessary, but I digress.
Mr. Chairman,
Member Benedict.
I've been called worse things. If it's under the CCNRs, then it would be the HOA's responsibility to enforce that, I think. Yeah. So, whether, when they call James' first answer sure ought to be, it's in the CCNRs, you need to.
Contact your
HOA should be the first, to my mind, that should be the first place to take it up. I mean, the answer to your question, to me, is that's not what the applicant is asking for.
Sure.
They're not, they're not asking for a duplex. So we're trying to make it fit what the demand that they perceive is.
100%.
And I hear where let's not make ourselves problems. I'm not sure it does, I
Sure.
guess is my point.
Yeah.
Because it's the HOA's problem.
It's all right. I can buy into that.
I guess
answer.
that's
It's not our
that's-
problem, it's their problem.
That's the short, down and dirty kind of comment.
All right, I can buy into that. Anybody else? No? All right. Thank you, guys. At this time, applicant, come on up. Thank you for being here this evening.
Good to be here. This is the first hearing I have attended in person and not virtually in about a year. And let me tell you, this feels wonderful.
And it's in Casa Grande, we're even better.
Thank you so much. I'm going to start by just, well, first, let me tell you my name and address for the record. It's Rod Jarvis. I'm with Earl and Curley. I'm representing Lennar. My address is 3101 North Central Avenue, Suite 1000 in Phoenix, Arizona. I'd like to start by addressing that concern raised about enforceability. Recognizing that zoning enforcement is always done on a complaint basis anyway. I mean, we simply don't have enough city personnel in Casa Grande or any other municipality or county to proactively enforce. That being said, generally speaking, the laws are abided by. And when they're not, they're often discovered and reported and then enforced. And that would also be the case here. There are a number of practical bars to setting up this kind of a multifamily setting that we've been talking about here. And as was pointed out, that's really not what we're asking for. It's not the way it's physically set up. It isn't separately metered. There's one address, one garage, and all of the mechanical systems has been indicated. Is it possible that somebody will go out and violate and do something, go through the 5 positions of zoning ballet in order to avoid something? Yeah, that happens, but it's not terribly frequent, and the system does work. Also, the question was raised about a sidewalk down the side. Typically, Lennar will put a sidewalk down that side, whether it's a next gen or not, because that's where the garbage cans are going to go. It's helpful to be able to have a hard surface. At my house, I have one on the side of my house so that I can wheel those garbage cans back there without going over a bumpy surface and so on. That's typically going to happen, but this unit is still going to have common door, interior, common door to the garage. It is integrated into the house. The reason this resonates with me so much is I'm a boomer and I have an adult child that lives at home. So coming and going, this is something that I'm experiencing as what's called a tweener, right? I've got a mom who fortunately has the means and has chosen to live in an assisted living place. If she weren't, then she'd be with me. And if she were with me, she would want to have her own facilities. And I would want my mom and my wife not to share the same kitchen facilities. I'd like them to both have that independence for the sake of harmony and peace in the home. This is, I think, what we're really talking about here is we're talking about stove oven. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The first slide there lists a number of municipalities, about 10 of them, and 2 counties, including this county and Maricopa County, that have already accommodated this kind of use in their code. We're not doing that tonight. We're simply asking for a PAD amendment. I'm not doing that to say, well, the whole group is doing it, and therefore Casa Grande must. That's not the point. It's to simply let you all know this is well plowed ground, and there's a reason for that. Let's go to the next slide. Here you go. Here's the reason for it. My generation is the boomer generation. It's a big generation, and it's by 2030, this generation is all going to be considered to be 65 and older. It'll go from 13% in 2010 to 19% in 2030. So it's a growing group. We're a big generation. And that graph there on the top shows that as of 2016, 20% of Americans lived in a multi-generational household. My brother lives in one now. He's got an adult son with a wife and 2 children. The son is attending U of A Law School, but the law school is operating virtually. My brother lives up in East Mesa. Son said, "Hey, how about free rent?" And so they're living together in that house. This is not an unusual situation. As staff has talked about, what we're really talking about is using common cooking facilities or a second kitchen. But that, to drill down on that, staff will tell you The way that's defined is having the stove or oven. If you get the second stove or oven in that second kitchen. So if you go to the next slide, as was pointed out, these are all cooking implements that would be permitted in that second kitchen without the stove or oven, and then it wouldn't be considered to be the second kitchen that trips the ordinance. So you could have the kitchen sink, you can have the the kitchen cabinets, you can have everything and have mom using a microwave and, a really nice toaster oven. My wife bought one of those and put it in the pantry when she doesn't want to use the big oven. Cook plate. These things are all available. The question is really just a little bit more convenience, a little more accommodation between the generations. Staff already talked about the parking issue also that had been raised as a possible concern. Really simply, stove oven does not equal need for car. We already have people in many communities living in these haven't created a parking issue. As long as they don't put that stove oven in there, they can live in there, and it's not creating a parking issue. So it just hasn't been a problem that we really need to hold this up so that the generations can help one another. And that's really, it's not just the younger generation taking care of the boomers that are aging. Those boomers can help that younger generation. I think we all know it's becoming much more expensive for families to afford the single-family home. And it's really handy to have two generations paying for it. And that younger generation is out there, two incomes in the household. And somebody's got to be watching the nest, watching the little ones, while the two younger ones are out there, working and earning a living. It's so beneficial in so many ways, binding families together, helping to raise the upcoming generation. And that's why there's such a demand for it. That's why Lennar has experienced the demand for it. This shows the parcels 3 and 4 on the aerial we're talking about. The next slide will show you parcel 3, understand that, and then parcel 4. Understand all the lots that are in blue are not going to go into the next gen plan. There are 6 plans. The next gen plan would be one of 6. It's just that those would be available, and that's the elevation we're talking about, one of the elevations of that floor plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, real quick, hang on. I just want to clarify. I think
right
that
ahead, sir.
before, just so I'm not misunderstood, I love the concept of this. I just don't understand our conditions 1 and 2 since they're already presented in the CCNRs. I guess that's my ultimate, the city adding in things that are covered elsewhere.
Thank you.
Member McBride.
Yeah, going back to my original question, so does this mean that all of the houses you build are going to have a sidewalk around that side of the house?
Let me ask Lennar representatives.
Yeah, sure.
Come on up.
And I'll ask the second part of the question before you answer that one. And will there be a fence before or after that door? Because I know there's going to be a fence someplace along the side of your house.
Sure,
And so will that door be in the backyard or the front yard?
sure. So for the record, Jeff Gunderson, I'm Senior Vice President of Land Operations for Lennar. And my address is 16611 South 36th Place in Phoenix, Arizona. So to answer your specific question, on all of our plans on the garage side, we typically include a fence return and a gate. And we do provide a sidewalk from the driveway around the corner of the home and back to the gate. And we do that, as Rod mentioned, to provide a space for garbage cans to be not in the parking spaces in the garage.
I wish my my development would have done that too.
Yes.
Believe me.
And so the gate is in front of the next gen entrance. The next gen entrance is behind that gate.
Okay.
And that not only is considered a potential entrance for the suite, but it's also access to the side yard. I mean, a lot of times, aging parents, boomerang kids, whatever you want to call them, they like that outdoor cooking facilities too. They may have a grill that they want to access and put in that side yard. It makes it really nice. And that's,
That's the way I would want it to be.
yeah,
I just wanted to clarify that's what the intent was.
that is the intent.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Thanks. Any other questions while I'm up?
I have one, because you're in the building part of it, and I have my 94-year-old mother living with us for the last 12 years, our house in a separate complex. Is your mechanical systems different from the other houses? What I'm saying is elderly people require more heat, they require more hot water, so is your mechanical systems, like, you have separate thermostats in each of these rooms for the elderly? Do you have larger hot water heaters in your area? Because a 60-gallon hot water heater will not be sufficient if you got elderly people living in this house. I just want to know if the mechanical systems are different from a regular single-family housing.
So we do try to duct them and to control them separately from an HVAC standpoint, but not on every plan is it specific, so it's kind of plan specific. Our AC units are all sized for the square footage of the home, and so we don't really vary that a whole lot. As far as the water heaters are concerned, that's all driven by fixture count. So the fixture count is what it is. The next gen suite is gonna have, you know, a kitchen and a bathroom, so the water heater will be sized to accommodate the fixture count. So we don't make any changes there.
Okay, because mine is just the opposite. We had to put extra bigger hot water heaters in, and we have separate thermostats, still the same unit, but separate thermostats for the parents that are in their,
Understood.
when they're in their 80s and 90s, believe me, they need a lot more heat.
I understand completely. I think we're doing okay on sizing, though. We introduced this concept in Gilbert for the first time in 2011. And since 2011, we've sold well more than 1,000 of these units across the valley and all those municipalities that we put up there, including the counties.
Okay.
It's currently about 25% of our home building operation.
Yeah.
So it's a big component, and so far, not a whole lot of complaints.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? No? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys for being here. So, at this time, then I will open it up to the public. Would anybody from the public like to speak to this agenda item?
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. John McGuire, 1748 North St. Francis Place. This topic in my group was one of the most discussed topics that we've had in the 18 months the new group has been around. All the things that you folks have discussed so far all came up in the discussion, and overwhelmingly, it was 228 people said absolutely let these go in, 8 people said no, and 12 didn't care. So that's a pretty overwhelmingly public support. And again, my group isn't completely representative of the entire city, but they do live in PADs for the most part, you know, so they understand the positives and the negatives of this. And, you know, I'm actually considering it now, you know, because we have too big of a house for us now, and this is an option to help defray some costs for the kids who can't afford a bigger house that they're gonna need soon. So I think the public absolutely supports these. And Lennar's somewhat upgraded homes that they build already lend themselves to this. They're already more appointed than some of the other parts. And this is me coming from McCartney Ranch that I lived in before where I'm at now. So I support this and hope you approve it. Thank you.
I was waiting for you to say rent out. Sorry. I'm teasing you, John. Anybody else from the public like to? Seeing nobody, I'll close the public portion. And I will just make a note. I believe last time this came in front of us, I think we were all supportive of trying to find a way to make it happen. So I'm excited that we're back in front of us to find the way to make it happen, by all means. But with that, Commission?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the commission make a favorable recommendation forward to the city council to approve the PAD amendment TSA-21-00045, also under the following conditions of the staff.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Peters,
Aye.
Member Benedict,
Yes.
Member Estrada,
Yes.
Member Dugan,
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride,
Yes.
Chairman Miller.
Yes. All right, so that's approved. Good luck at council. Thank you guys for being here. All right, we got a twofer going on here now, right? So next agenda item, public hearing and consideration request by, is it iPlan Consulting on behalf of Century Communities. We have a housing product, DSA 21-00028, and a conditional use permit, DSA 21-00029.
So I told this to the applicant, but I had worked with him previously for another housing product request, and we exchanged a lot of emails. His name's Greg Davis, but his email's Greg iPlan. And it took me a little longer than it should have to realize that his last name wasn't iPlan. But that is the name of the consulting group. And they're in front of you this evening with two requests on behalf of Century Communities. The first being a request for housing product, and the second is a request for a conditional use permit, which would allow the placement of a model home complex. A little background, Costa Vista has been seeing a lot of activity recently. The subdivision was originally created probably about 15 or 16 years ago, and it's comprised of 366 vacant lots. Richmond American Homes have acquired half of the lots. Century Complete has already received housing product approval for 88 lots, and then Century Communities, which is the parent company to Century Complete, is seeking housing product approval for 95 lots this evening. The request for the housing product this evening is for their 70-foot wide lots. They average in size about 8,400 square feet, and they're proposing a 40-foot wide series. Here's an excerpt of the product that is being proposed. Basically, there's 5 floor plans, each with 3 elevations. As I mentioned, they're 40 feet wide, and they range in size from 1,971 square feet to 2,840 square feet. There's 2 single-story homes and then 3 two-story homes with 19 color schemes and various front yard landscape packages. This is just little samplings of what's been included with their housing product. This is one of, or 2 of 19 color schemes here for you, and an example of one of their front yard landscape packages. When reviewing housing product criteria, it's subject to the Casa Vista PAD itself, as well as the 2003 version of the Residential Design Standards for Planned Area Developments. The staff report goes into greater detail, as well as the narrative provided by the applicant, how this criteria is met. So I'm going to just quickly gloss over how it meets it. The first part of the 2003 Residential Design Standards speak to a certain number of floor plans and elevations that have to be accommodated. They are achieving that. There's another element that speaks to roofs. They're providing 3 different concrete roof styles. and it does meet the requirements of the design standards. There's another aspect of the design standards that speak to garages and garage orientation upon the home plans, and staff has found that their home plans do meet the requirements. They're providing 3 different elevations for the garage doors to match the Spanish Craftsman or Modern Prairie. There's another aspect of it that talks about patio covers. And here's an example of where it shows basically all the plans do provide for covered back yard patios, but there's many of the floor plans that also provide front yard covered patio areas as well, as you can see on the side profile of 2 of these different floor plans. There's also another section where the applicant is required to meet 4 of 8 additional requirements, and the narrative they provided spoke to the fact that they are meeting items number 1, 2, 3, and 5, and staff agrees that that is being achieved. And so we do recommend approval of the housing product. Their second request is for the conditional use permit for a model home complex. And the location of the model home complex is at the northwest corner of Brooklyn Drive and Parker Lane. They're essentially just proposing a 2-lot complex, one being the temporary off-street parking area, which will be right on the corner. And then their model home will also double as a sales office, so there'll be a temporary sales office in lieu of the garage. When reviewing conditional use permits, there's a certain set of criteria that have to be met, and the staff report covers all of these more thoroughly. Usually with model home complexes, the primary one that we're most concerned about is the bottom highlighted one, that there's to be special conditions to help ensure that public health, safety, and general welfare are protected. So as a result of that, there's an associated resolution that imparts these 11 conditions. They're fairly standard among all model home sales complexes. I do want to talk a little bit about other issues with Casa Vista. So as I mentioned, it's about a 15-year-old subdivision. It's all vacant, but they're all finished lots. However, due to years of inactivity, there are certain areas that do have to be touched up. The landscape and drainage tracts are missing materials per the final landscape plan for Casa Vista. And there's some maintenance issues. And so as a result, one of the conditions that are associated with these approvals is that prior to C of O, either these landscape areas have to be restored per the plan, or otherwise they have to be financially secured. With essentially three different home builders in there, I don't anticipate that to be a problem. Regarding the public notification process, it did meet code requirements and there were no comments received. So staff is making 2 recommendations. The first is for the housing product, subject to 6 conditions of approval. I realize 6 is cut off, but I can read that if you need assistance. And then staff is also making a recommendation that commission approve the conditional use permit and its associated resolution, subject to the conditions that I've covered in the presentation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Questions for staff? Member McBride?
Mine's a simple one. You said before any of the CFOs were given out, they would be brought up to standard. Is that the entire development will be brought up to standard or just their section?
So it's going to be relative to the specific home builder section ultimately. But there's a couple of different mechanisms in which they could do. They could amend the landscape plan to introduce phasing. The goal is really for the subdivision to be brought up to the approved final landscape plan sooner than later. So that's going to have to ultimately be worked out among the 3 home builders in terms of if they want to just do one area at a time.
Is there any way that we're going to be able to ensure that somebody just doesn't say, this is mine, this is the only thing I'm going to develop, and this is mine?
If it came to that, what we would probably have each respective homeowner do is clearly delineate the areas they've chosen to be responsible for, and then we would work with them to address that.
Thank you.
Cottonwood Ranch, we required them to bring it through. I know a little bit different because it was only one builder, but they had to bring it through, right? All the retention areas, and there was another little area that had nothing.
Right. And what they chose to do is, prior to C of O, they put it in.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? No? Awesome. Thank you. Applicant and/or their representative like to come forward? Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me, Chair. Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission, Mario Mangiamelli. I'm not Greg Davis, but Mario Mangiamelli, iPlan Consulting, Gilbert, Arizona. I'm here tonight on behalf of Century Communities of Arizona. Century Communities has been building homes for about 19 years. However, they are relatively new to the Arizona market. They have been building in about, I believe it is 17 states, from single-family detached, like you see proposed here tonight, all the way through to condominiums and flats further towards the East Coast. As James did identify, is that the request is for housing product for 5 plans, 2 single-story, 3 two-story homes, as well as the corresponding model home complex, which is subject to a conditional use permit. We are in agreement with all staff's recommended conditions of approval. We're not aware of any sort of public comment or opposition to this request, and therefore we are here respectfully requesting your approval tonight. To answer a question that I thought I heard come up earlier with respect to the timing of improvements, that is something that is currently being worked on between Richmond American and our sister company, Century Complete, the other 2 builders in this subdivision, because obviously those improvements do need to be brought to speak, so it's not going to help anybody's marketing campaign to be selling homes within the subdivision when you don't have landscape, you don't have walls that are maintained, so forth. But we will work with staff to determine the timing, if those need to be approved prior to the C of O and/or there's going to be some sort of assurances or bonding. But my guess right now, very preliminary, is that both, or I should say all 3 builders want to see those improvements complete sooner rather than later. And with that, Chair, I'm here to answer any additional questions you may have.
Any questions for the applicant?
I only have one. Are you building any models like similar to what Lennar is for multi-generational adults, so they're going to have additional kitchens and so forth?
Commissioner Dugan, through the chair, at this time, the 5 proposed plans do not have what Lennar considers their next gen. What I usually consider is having 2 separate cooking facilities within the residential unit. No, not at this time. If that is the case, then we'll most likely need to come back before city staff to discuss the sort of a proposal.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you for being here this evening with us.
Thank you for your time, and as if I could mimic what Rod Jarvis said earlier, it's great to actually be in a hearing in person over the last, better than Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever else is going on.
All right. So then at this time, I'll open it up to the public. Seeing nobody, I will close the public portion. Bring it back to the commission.
It's your turn.
I'd like to make a motion.
Sweet.
To forward, staff recommend the commission approve housing product DSA 21-00028 for Century Communities upon 95 the lots and Casa Vista pad with the following conditionals and approvals.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second for the approval of the housing product. Any discussion? Hearing none. Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Peters,
Aye.
Member Benedict,
Aye.
Member Estrada,
Yes.
Member Dugan,
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride,
Yes.
Chairman Miller.
Yes. All right. 1 down, 1 to go.
I'll tackle this one too. Recommend to approve, the commission, the conditional use permit for DSA -21 00029 for Century Community Models Home Complex and the associated resolution subject to the, with all following conditions.
Second.
Been motioned and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Peters,
Aye.
Member Benedict,
Aye.
Member Estrada,
Yes.
Member Dugan,
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride,
Yes.
Chairman Miller.
Yes. Motion approved. Thank you again for being here. Alright. Oh, sure. It's not me. Oh, alright. So, next agenda item. Public hearing and consideration request by Richmond American Homes for a conditional use permit, DSA -21-00036.
So this is gonna seem very familiar to you because it's a request within the same subdivision as Century Communities in the last presentation, but this is a request by Richmond American Homes for their model home complex. It's actually just across the street from Century Communities. It's on the northeast corner of Parker Lane and Brooklyn Drive. Little background though, Planning Commission did approve Richmond American Homes housing product in January. 8 floor plans were approved, each with 3 elevations ranging just shy of 1,600 square feet to just over 2,600 square feet. There were 7 single-story homes and 1 two-story home, 2 homes with an RV garage. And now they're simply requesting to help showcase those homes by constructing a model home complex. It's a 4-lot complex. The corner lot would be a temporary off-street parking area. And then the lot directly next to that would be a model home that would have a sales office in place of the garage temporarily. It would be restored back to a functioning garage at the end of the life of the CUP. The next home would be one of their other approved plans, a little larger in size. And the home on the end would feature one of the 2 houses that feature an RV garage as a show home. When reviewing conditional use permits, it's subject to specific criteria. The staff report talks about it in greater detail. But again, with these model home complexes, they tend to provide the same types of special conditions to help protect public health, safety, and general welfare. And so these are staff's recommended conditions that would be a part of the associated resolution. Regarding the public notification process, it followed that which is required by code, and there were no comments received. Staff does recommend that Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit for the model home complex and its associated resolution with the following specific conditions. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? All right. Applicant and/or their representative? No?
Chairman, I don't believe they're here.
Assume not.
I did learn that Jake Nickel, who's been in front of you a lot of instances, did move on. So there will be another representative, so I think probably because they're in transition, they weren't able to make it this evening.
Table, I'm just kidding.
Second.
Sorry. Paul, don't be giving me love here. Come on now. He couldn't even get a chuckle out of him when I said it, man. He was worried. Public, anybody from the public like to speak to this agenda item? Seeing nobody, I'll close the public portion, bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, please.
All right.
I'd like to Make a motion to approve conditional use permit DSA 21-00036 for Richmond American Homes Complex and the associated resolutions, subject to the listed conditions.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Peters,
Aye.
Member Benedict,
Aye.
Member Estrada,
Yes.
Member Dugan,
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride,
Yes.
Chairman Miller,
Yes. Motion approved. All right. Now we have a request by the city.
Marijuana.
Hmm?
Did the marijuana one.
All right. Zoning text amendment.
Thank
Give me
you.
I don't have a number. I don't have anything to go off of.
You have a number of.
Oh, there it is. It's not on my sheet.
DSA 21-00048.
It's not on my agenda.
Sorry.
Thank you, though. I was trying to call it out.
So, Mr. Mayor.
Easy. No.
A motion or demotion?
Mr.
Does that mean I get to make a proclamation?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a request by the city to amend our zoning code regulations related to marijuana uses. I'm going to ask Natalie to go ahead and pass out the actual code amendments that were modified slightly from the ones that are attached to your staff report, and I'll be referring to those during my presentation. So there's 4 sections of code that are being amended that we're going to discuss.
You missed it.
I hope lots of people are watching us on TV right now.
I didn't see anything.
Okay, so with the recent passage of the proposition that made the adult use of marijuana products legal in Arizona, in addition to the prior proposition that allowed medical use, we find it necessary to change our zoning regulations to address that change. City Council previously adopted an emergency ordinance just before the proposition went into effect, basically saying that adult use, sale of adult use marijuana products were allowed in Casa Grande, but restricted to a dispensary that has a dual use license issued by Arizona Department of Health Services for allowing the sale of both medical marijuana products and adult use. So that emergency ordinance is in place and was sort of an interim ordinance until we could draft these changes to the zoning code and bring them before Planning Commission and then on to City Council. So that's what we're doing. I'm going to say that essentially the only changes that we've made are to expand the code to allow adult use marijuana products and to eliminate the reference to medical marijuana and just more generalize it to marijuana products. And I'll run you through the specifics on that. So the first change really were to the definitions. And so you have a sheet that says definitions related to marijuana uses. And you can see that we define marijuana itself. I believe that's probably a new definition. It's just further vetted out. We do continue the medical marijuana definition. We continue the marijuana cultivation. The marijuana dispensary definition has been modified to say that a marijuana dispensary could either be someone who holds a dual use license, which means they can sell both medical product and adult use product. So it includes dual use licensees who sell both products at the same shared location, or just a dispensary that might just sell medical marijuana as a dispensary as well. So just two kinds of dispensaries, dual use and medical only. Marijuana infusion stays in place. We do add a new use called marijuana testing facility. That wasn't in the prior ADHS regs, but it was part of the new proposition where the product has to be tested and verified. So we might have testing facilities in the city as well. We did leave all, essentially, the medical marijuana regulations in place, including the cultivation ability for caregivers. So those are the changes to definitions. The next thing I want to talk about is 1752, Article 7. You have that. It's called marijuana uses, where it's hereby repealed and replaced in its entirety as follows. Those are the standards for where where marijuana uses have to be developed in accordance with. So you can see that there's some, and again, these basically have stayed the same as they are today, except for eliminating the reference solely to medical. So the construction requirements for dispensaries stay the same. The distance requirements, there has been one change on distance, and I'm going to point it out to you. It's under C, and it says 500 feet from any property zoned, used, or platted for residential purposes. The current code says 500 feet from any property used or platted for residential purposes. So we added the zoning category. So essentially, potentially increased the distance requirements that might be applied by if you had vacant residentially zoned property. It's not technically used, it's zoned, might not be platted, but it's certainly going to have a future use for residential. So we thought it was appropriate to add that separation. We'll talk a little bit about the marijuana dispensary overlay zone, which remains in place. Really no change there, but I will review that with you in just a second. The other thing next thing I want to point out is the modifications to our commercial office zone. It's just a one-sentence kind of regulation, and the only thing we did there is remove the word medical out of marijuana. So marijuana dispensaries are allowed in the CO zone within the dispensary overlay zone, and I'll show you how that applies in just a second as well, but no change other than removing the reference to medical. Then we have lastly the table of where marijuana uses can be located. And again, I'm going to tell you that there's no change. Marijuana dispensaries are allowed both in the dispensary overlay zone, which I'll show you, and also the marijuana uses are allowed in the I-1 and I-2 zones, subject to our separation requirements. And so marijuana uses also include dispensaries. So dispensaries are allowed in the overlay zone, they're allowed in I-1 and I-2. The cultivation facilities, the infusion facilities, and the testing facilities are only allowed in the I-1 and I-2 zones. So with that, I'm going to just show you some graphics that illustrate some of what I just described to you. So this slide shows you the blue square on the right is the dispensary overlay zone around the hospital, stays in effect. We're going to look at some more details on that in just a second. And the green area shows you the areas that are zoned I-1 and I-2 that meet all of the distance requirements. So we've done some analysis to show which areas zoned I-1 and I-2 might meet all the separation requirements of the code, A good example of that you might look in Peters Road, and you can see that hole in the middle. That hole in the middle is because there's a couple residences right there on the south side of Peters, right adjacent to the Lucid plant, that create a separation, a 500-foot separation. You can, even though it's all zoned industrial, there's a separation from those homes. Interestingly enough, those homes have now been purchased by Lucid and are going to probably be rezoned eventually into industrial, and so that circle will go away. We do have a couple of cultivation facilities that are being proposed in the city. One on, I think, VIP. Where's the other one, Joe?
The Jefferson property, and then also the Central Arizona Commerce Park, and then the airport.
So we have 3 or 4. As those come online and actually get permitted, separation requirements will be imposed around them because there is a separation from other marijuana uses, including cultivation facilities. So there will be separations. So some of the green will go away as facilities are approved. I guess I do want to note that on dispensaries, although this current city council emergency ordinance limits the dispensaries to 1 dual use, this replacement ordinance does not limit the number of dispensaries. It says that if you're in the right zone districts and you meet the requirements for separation and ADHS issues you the license, you can locate. Right now, ADHS rules still limit dispensaries to 1 in Casa Grande because of how they've been allocated, and they have a formula that determines how many dispensaries are allocated throughout the state depending on the number of pharmacies and by CHAZ zones, community health analysis zones. It's a formula that's applied by Department of Health Services. But essentially, our approach here is that those regulations determine the actual number. We as a locality determine the location that's appropriate to put whatever number ADHS licenses that could be located in Casa Grande. This is a blow up of the overlay zone, the dispensary overlay zone. You can see it's around the hospital. This shows you some of the underlying zone districts that are within the overlay zone. So you can see there's some PAD, there's some OC, some CO, there's some B2. The overlay zone only allows dispensaries within zones that allow businesses and offices, so that green, which is urban ranch, currently could not accommodate any dispensary unless it was rezoned into a commercial zone, and the residential to the north, the R3 also would not allow any dispensaries.
Real quick on that, if you go back to that other one?
Yes,
That
sir.
would include now a 500-foot distance from that because that's used as residential purpose.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to show you that in just one second, how that analysis.
Perfect.
But before I do, let me show you where our existing dispensary is. We have one, it's Harvest, it's a dual license, you can see it. It's off Sabin Drive. It's in the north side of that particular building. So this graphic shows you what potential sites there might be within the overlay zone that meet all of the separation requirements. From everything, from the existing dispensary, from residential, from every use that we have a separation requirement. And so you can see there's really not much available land within the overlay zone that potentially could have a dispensary. The yellow lots are currently zoned residential, but so they'd have to be rezoned. But if they were rezoned, then there's potential location for those 2 yellow lots that are vacant. If the current dispensary in red would go away, it would free up other sites. But, in my opinion, there's room in this zone district, in this overlay zone area, for one, maybe two dispensaries maximum that meet the all distance requirements. But for right now, it's only one location that meets it. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval for the proposed zoning text amendment related to marijuana uses to City Council, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Member Benedict.
At the risk of showing my ignorance, what's the logic of the 500 feet separation from an airport?
That's a good question.
Good, glad to
You
hear
know,
that.
I can't really tell you the basis for that. You know, when we drafted those separation requirements with the first proposition for medical marijuana, that was imposed. And for the life of me, I could not recall what the basis was. So I really can't give you a good rationale.
Well, it was a good question. Thank you very much.
Just 'cause.
All right, any other questions? No?
I might be able to make a guess if you guys want, and I don't know if this is true, but
You like
usually when things like this come out, the League of Cities provides a model ordinance that a lot of cities use and take things from. So my guess is it might have been in the model ordinance, and we just use that as one of the separations. Why it was in there, I don't know. Maybe people were afraid that, you know, if you're that close to an airport, you know, trafficking could go on. I mean, I don't know. There's many reasons, or there may be many reasons that we're unaware of, because, you know, our airport isn't Sky Harbor, isn't, you know, Mesa Gateway, right? So it could have just been in the model code, and we, at the time, felt it necessary. That could be one explanation, but like Paul said, it was almost 10 years ago now, so it's hard to remember.
Just don't want you flying into town and heading over there right away, I guess. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, since you are the applicant and the city staff, I'll open it up to the public. See nobody from the public, I'll close the public portion and bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose we forward a favorable recommendation on DSA 21-00048 to the City Council.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Peters,
Aye.
Member Benedict,
Yes.
Member Estrada,
Yes.
Member Dugan,
Yes.
Vice Chairman McBride,
Yes.
Chairman Miller,
Yes. All right. Get some reports by the planning director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we did have some administrative approvals for minor amendment to the major site plan at the Public Safety Building. So there was the shade structure for a K-9 training area. We had a minor site plan approved for auto sales facility on Cottonwood Lane for display areas and parking for a small auto dealership and trailer rental. We approved a new security fence at the Luce's Hannah Road facility and approved a new rear patio wall for VFW. So those were our administrative approvals. We did have a Board of Adjustment appeal hearing where a property owner had appealed our denial of their home occupation permit to run a nail and hair salon out of their home. And that was appealed to the board, and the board did overturn staff's decision and went ahead and approved the home occupation permit with some restrictions. Primarily one that limited it to 1 year to see if there was ever really any adverse impact to the neighborhood. So there was a Board of Adjustment decision. No city council decisions on planning commission recommendations since your last hearing. We did provide you with the monthly development reports. You can see that construction remains strong in the single-family sector. And so we're pretty busy in the building and planning department. So that concludes my reports.
Great. Thank you. Member Dugan.
I have one question for the executive, Paul Tice. It's come to my attention the last couple months because there's, 18 home builders in town. And what's happening is the housing market is kind of going nuts right now. And we're reverting back to from my understanding is when somebody wants to go look at these models, the home builders are now not letting them see the models. They're putting them in the lottery system. And then when they get those houses built that they sold, then they're going into a lottery system, and then they're drawing their names out, and the people then can come and look at the models. And I'm thinking, do we want that kind of deal here in Casa Grande? If the office is open, they should be able to see the models at least. Is it, we would have no say in this, or do we have a say in this? I don't think that's right, but that's private business. I mean, how far can we go as saying is, hey, if they got models and they're open, their office is open, and they're not allowing them to see the models? And I just want to bring it up, if that's the way it's got to be, and we have no say in it, that's just the private practice, I guess, private industry, and they can do that. But do we want our reputation in the Casa Grande that we're in a lottery system down here now as far as buying houses? I don't know if that's good or bad. I just thought we'd discuss it.
So since it's not on the agenda, we can't discuss it, but I'm just gonna say that's news to me, what you're saying. But I can tell you what we can do is we can look into that and put it on next month's agenda and report back to what we find out from our inquiries with the various builders. How's that sound?
I love that. I don't know what the other members want us to do, but I love to have it.
Let's not answer that right now.
What's that?
I said, let everybody else don't answer that right now.
No, we're not answering anything.
Right,
But that's what we'll do.
but yes, we
I'm
can
just
put it
looking
on
for
the
the
agenda
next item
for
on the
discussion.
agenda.
Right.
Which would be G, in case anybody needs help.
Well, you want to move to adjourn?
Yeah, there you go.
I'm moving to adjourn.
All right.
Okay.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.